Well, we continue in the book of Ruth. If you want to get your Bibles opened there, we're in chapter 1, down about verse 16. We started this last week and didn't get any further because we ran out of time, but it's a segment where Ruth pledges her loyalty and her presence and all of that to Naomi as she's going back to the land of Judah and leaving the land of Moab. And put it up there in the Old King James Version because, as I told you last week, it's kind of like the way it flows in talking about it. But Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. And your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. And the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me." And again, we just go through that word for word. "Entreat me not to leave thee." There's the Old King James. The first one that I read was New King James. "Or return from following after thee, for whither thou goest, I will go." And in essence, what Ruth is pledging there is her presence. I'm going to be with you. And that is what she seems to be saying with that first thing there, which means, number one, Naomi's not going to be alone. She's going to have somebody with her who loves her, who cares for her, who wants what's best for her. And so she's making that claim, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there for you. And isn't that a comfort to know that there are people that are there for you when you need them? It's a good feeling to know that. And in the church, we know that we have each other's backs. We watch out for each other. We take care of each other as best we can. And that's a very important thing for us to always keep in mind and be available when we have the opportunity to do that. "And where thou lodgest, I will lodge." And so Ruth is, in effect, pledging her family ties. Your home's my home now. Your family is my family now. And as we think about that, isn't that what we do when we become a part of the church? When we obey the gospel, we become family. We pledge our family ties, our family with each other, and we are brothers and sisters in Christ. And that's a beautiful thing to keep in mind. "Thy people shall be my people." Ruth is pledging her national loyalty. And you think of all the things that she's doing. Obviously, she's leaving. She's going to be with Naomi. She has an important tie with her. But to change nationality, that's kind of a big thing, isn't it? I mean, she's grown up in Moab. She's been a Moabite. She knows everything there is probably to know about Moab. But now she's going to become an Israelite and live according to the rules and the laws and everything that are associated with Israel. And that's a big change for her. It shows us, I think, the depth of her commitment, that she's willing to do that. But she's going to have to, probably, she's just guessing here, probably she knows some of the language because living 10 years with the family that speaks that language, Hebrew, they would have picked that up and learned that. So she probably knows the language well enough by this point in time. But the cultures, the things that they do, it's all going to be different for her. And so she's pledged to leave behind what she knows for something that's going to be, in effect, a new adventure for her. "And thy God, my God." Ruth is pledging her faith. I will follow your God, and he will be my God. It's what, in effect, she's saying. I'll follow him. I will claim him. I will obey him. I will be involved in him and all those things. That's what I want to do. And again, big change from Chemosh or whoever it was that she worshipped in that polytheistic society there in Moab. This is going to be different because there's only one, and he's the only one you follow. And that's going to be a change for her that, again, she's probably prepared for in living with Naomi all these years. "Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." And she, in effect, pledges her steadfastness. Again, she pledged to be there, but now she's pledging, I'm here till the end. I'm here till the story is over. I'm here till my life is over, till your life is over. We are connected for life. And again, that is as we said, this is often used in weddings because the sentiment fits well with marriage, doesn't it? And that last part especially fits well with marriage. That's not how it was uttered originally, but it works, doesn't it? Good part of a wedding ceremony to have that in there. So she pledges her presence, her family ties, her national loyalty, her faith, and her steadfastness, all in this one few verses here, verses 16 and 17. She says all of that to Naomi at that point in time. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Glenn?
It kind of reminds you of Esther when she said, if I perish, I perish.
Yeah. When Esther had the, I'd say, opportunity or the need to go in before the king, she hadn't been invited, and that could be what in that culture? Death sentence. But she said, I'm going. I've got to go. I've got to do this. And if I die, then I die. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We will not bow down to your statue. And God can protect us. But if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down. And we will gladly give our lives in order to be faithful to him. So it's a great statement of faith that she presents here about her desire to do this. And she's in it with her whole heart and mind and soul. And she's ready to follow that. All right? Anything else? Elwin.
That's the same attitude we should have as all heart, mind, and soul.
Yeah.
First commandment and the second.
Absolutely. We need to be that dedicated to our faith and to our worship of God and service to God. Diana?
And I'm just looking at Matthew 16:24, where Jesus said to the disciple, if any man follows after me, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and pick up his cross and follow me.
Yeah.
So he's letting us know that in order to be Christ-like or be in Christ, or be in that atonement with him, we have to deny our own thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a surrender, isn't it, to God's will and to God's way, and not my will and my way. And Ruth is in effect doing that. She's surrendering basically all that she is to do this and to follow and be with Naomi and to follow Naomi's God and live among Naomi's people and make them her people. And so what a great commitment. And you think about that commitment, and at least, well, the only time frame we know of in this is the 10 years that they were there, however long they've been there, obviously more than 10 years, but they were at least there 10 years. And it makes you wonder, did it take that full 10 years for her to get to the point she was willing to do that? Or did it take 5 or 7? We have no way of knowing. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is when we think about evangelism. Evangelism is simply planting the seed and waiting for it to grow, right? That's what we hope to do. We're the sower. And God's word is a seed, and it bears fruit sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't when you think about that parable. But my personal issue is it doesn't happen fast enough, right? I want to open the Bible, spend an hour or so in the Bible, and then put them under the water. That's how fast I want it to go. And that's the way we all are, I think. We're impatient. Sometimes, though, it takes years upon years upon years before that happens. And part of that is not me, but part of that is them wrapping their mind around what they're doing, being able to pull up the commitment that's going to be necessary to do that. Well, just like what Ruth did, to be able to say, hey, I'm in this wholeheartedly, and it may take a long time for that to happen. And so as a result of that, we have to be patient in that process. Ellen and then Redenta.
And it not only has to do with those that are coming into the church, it's those of us that have been in the church. Mm-hmm. We have a whole lifetime that we have to work with other people. We have to listen. We have to love. We have to assist. We have to pray. We have to teach. We have to show them where the pitfalls are, like Satan's schemes. Is everyone aware of Satan's schemes? Or do some people need to be taught? Mm-hmm. We need to learn how to love in a way that is merciful, forgiving, and that we don't hold anything against people, because some people are so hard-headed, you ask yourself, why am I even bothered? But the point is, we have to sacrifice ourselves and our feelings and serve the person that we love so that they can come back and be with God. We can't let them go. And there's so many people in the churches of Christ today that have left. And trying to bring them back is very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Redempta?
I was just going to say, sometimes or many times you plant the seed, but you can't get them to obey. And someone else comes along and, builds on that, and they obey.
Yeah, absolutely. Redempta makes the point that sometimes you plant the seed, but it's somebody else who comes along and helps that seed to grow. You may not have the opportunity, or it may not resonate with them at that point. Somewhere down the line, it does with somebody else's help, and that's good. I mean, we can be selfish and say, I want the credit for that, but God knows whether you planted the seed or not. So that's all we need to worry about. Is He knows planted the seed. Let's just plant the seed and keep doing it and give Him the credit, because that's where the growth comes from. It's not me that's caused it, it's God that causes it. Flo, you were next.
Always keep in mind that God gives the increase.
Right.
That's where our patience should come.
Right.
And people understand this, but He's controlling.
Right.
You plant the seed, somebody else sows it, but He gives the increase. And regarding some thoughts on Ruth, when you look at her commitment, of course, we have to be impressed with her commitment to God. He tells Naomi that. But when a man and a woman get married, she was married to her northern sons who died. When we married, I committed myself to Marcia, but not just to Marcia, her family, her culture, maybe her religion, I don't know. Vice versa. She commits to me, my culture being Mexican, and my family and our dynamics. So Ruth has done the same thing, so that's part of her life. Her commitment is because that's what happens. And I think we have to think of it along those lines sometimes. How does it apply to our lives or everyday lives? And I think that's what she's doing. Yeah, absolutely. She's giving her all to this new relationship that she's in and everything involved in that. Elwin, you got a comment, I think.
Yeah, the other thing too is after a person's baptized, we had a situation where I worked with a sister and she was baptized. And immediately after that, it was my job, my opportunity to make sure that she had one that could disciple her that was female. So it's very important that we follow up, just like a good salesman. We know the perks of being a Christian. We know what the end results will be. So therefore, we have to make sure that the person that goes into the water, that becomes a member, is taken care of by the flock.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect of it. We're big on evangelism because we need to be. That's what we're supposed to be doing, evangelizing. But once they become part of the family, we need to help them in that growth process, because a lot of times they don't know very much about God's Word. And so they need that additional training, support, somebody that they can ask questions to and say, I don't understand this, explain this to me, all of that. And so that's as important as the initial part of becoming a child of God. Redempta?
I was just going to expound a little bit on what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Was it Apollos planted seed, I watered, and God gave the increase?
Yeah, Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So, other people can be involved in that, and that's a good thing. And if I'm in it for my own personal fame of counting out how many people I've baptized, well, I'm in it for the wrong reason. That's ego, and that's pride, and it's not evangelism. It's not preaching the gospel, because that's what we have to understand. Paul even argued, I'm glad I didn't baptize any of you. You remember that? He said, and whole different scenario, obviously, of why he's saying that. But Paul's mission wasn't to baptize. He was to preach gospel. That's what he did. I preached the gospel. All that other stuff will be the result of that preaching, the fallout of that preaching. But that's not what I'm here. I'm not here to count baptisms. I'm here to preach the word. All right? Anything else? All right. And when she saw that she was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. Now the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem, and it happened when they had come to Bethlehem that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, Is this Naomi? But she said to them, Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess with her daughter-in-law with her, who returned from the country of Moab. Now they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So, reading that for the first time, when she saw that she was determined to go with her, she just quit talking to her. Gave her the cold shoulder. No, that's not what it means. Stopped speaking to her. Here's some of the other versions. New International and Contemporary English said stopped urging her. Said nothing more. You can see the versions there. English Standard, New Living Translation. She gave in the message. She stopped arguing with her, New Century Version. Stopped trying to persuade her, the Holman Christian Standard Bible. So it wasn't she quit talking to her. It's just she quit pushing the argument, you need to go home and go follow after your sister-in-law. And so she just stopped that. She realized she had lost the argument. She wasn't going to win this one. And I think probably in her mind that was okay. I think she was probably glad to have her along. She was just trying to be the mother, trying to take care of her and look out for her and wanting what's best for her. And in Naomi's mind, what's best was to go home and get another husband in her mother's household and go on with her life. And Ruth said, no, the best thing for me is to be with you. And that's what she did. And so Naomi acquiesced to that. And the rest of that story is history. Two of them went till they came to Bethlehem. And it happened when they came to Bethlehem that all the city was excited at them. And the women said, is this Naomi? Now, it's been 10 years. How do they remember Naomi?
She was part of that.
Pardon?
She was part of that area.
Okay, part of that area. So she lived there, so people knew her when she lived there. But I've run into people back before we moved up here, we were in the Garden Ridge Pottery in Oklahoma City. And a girl walked up to me and said, are you Kevin Ballard? Yeah. She said, you know who I am? And I looked at her and I thought, nah, I got a clue who you are. Turned out her name was Linda. She grew up next door to my granny and grandpa in the next house, and we've been friends. And I just didn't recognize her. Things change with looks and all that. And so, what might be behind this idea of her being remembered, Bubba?
I was thinking she must have been heavily involved with this.
Okay.
For everybody to still remember after 10
Yeah.
years. Like I gave the example of Bill Nash. When I left Germany, Carlsruhe, on my first tour in the Army, I turned over the keys to the building where we were worshiping at the hill.
Yeah.
And when I first got back here, I didn't recognize Bill until he came up to me and gave me his name.
Yeah. Yeah, so something about Naomi was memorable, whatever that was. Bill?
She had a kinsman redeemer, so she had family there.
Okay, yeah. She had family there who remembered her and knew who she was. So, obviously, go ahead, Mike.
Bethlehem was a very small community.
Yeah.
Everybody knew everyone probably, besides with the Jews, the family feeling of a community. It was just a small community where everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
And you get around, everybody knowing who you were, what was going on in your life.
Yeah, everybody up in your business, taking care of things. That's small towns. Glenn?
Part of it may be that when she left, she had a husband and 2 sons.
Yeah.
And they may not have known. They
Mhm.
probably didn't know that they had died. And they say, well, is this Naomi? Where is everybody?
Where is everybody? Okay. Yeah. So she came back and she's recognized and she's known, and sounds like there was a buzz in the community that she was back. There may have been a buzz in the community when they left. May have been people who thought, I'm not so sure that's a wise choice, especially to go to Moab. Why are you leaving? Why don't you stay? And there were other people who might have scratched their head and said, well, we're starving to death here. Yeah, I see why they're moving. And there's food there, and so I could get that. And so there may have been a big buzz when they left, and now that she's back, a big buzz, especially that Mahlon, Chilion, and Elimelech aren't with her anymore. What happened? And maybe that whole story would come out in that discussion. You had a comment, Ellen?
Yes, and as we as Christians are to go about our lives glorifying God, she probably did the very same thing. People knew her because of her faith, her dedication, her love for one another. I mean, those are the people that we truly remember. That, when we meet them in our lives, and that's the whole point about going to heaven, because there's people there that we love immensely, and we cannot wait to see again in that joy.
Absolutely. And so it's a big thing coming home after that 10 plus years, however long it was, and people are happy to see her, probably glad to hear her story. of what happened and all the dealings she had while she was in Moab. I mean, I'm sure it was quite the buzz of the town for quite a while as she came back and had this daughter-in-law with her who was from Moab and had decided to stay with her and live with her and be a part of their life. But then there's that statement, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full and the Lord has brought me home empty again. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has afflicted me? Mara, that's the Hebrew word there for, not that I can read Hebrew, but the Blue Letter Bible said that's the Hebrew word for it. Mara, which simply means bitter. It's just a simple word, no hidden meaning in there at all. Notice what she says. The Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. The Lord has brought me home empty. The Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me. Those are the charges she levels when she gets back as to why she should not be called Naomi anymore. So what will you read into her mindset by looking at those things? Ellen?
First off, we all go through trials and tribulations. And God said they're not pleasant at the time, but they're going to build you.
Okay.
She left there. And I know that she in her heart believed that God wanted her to do that. The situation was, though, it came down to the point where she actually came back. And in a sense, she confessed a sin. Mm-hmm. She said, don't call me this, call me that, because God is against me. I understand why he's against me, and now I'm back. So we need to pray for those that are going through trials and tribulations and understand that each one of us go through them. Mm-hmm. All the time, it seems like God is always pushing us. And, you know, he talks about the punishment of those that he loves. And I've talked to Christians and said, how is God punishing you? Because if you're not being punished, there's a good possibility you're either not doing something right or you need to figure it out.
Okay. All right. Diana?
I don't necessarily know if there was something that was done wrong, but I remember going to a funeral where all 5 family members died, from the grandchildren to the children and the mothers. There was only one person left out of that whole situation. I think sometimes when we go through those trials and tribulations, sometimes burden is very heavy, and the mindset is, you know, what did I do wrong, or if I've done something wrong? And sometimes in Naomi's case, she lost not only that, she just lost her home. She was not able to go in and get her land and property and sell it or do anything because the women wouldn't give that opportunity. So now she's put all the way back to kind of like a child where you have to rely on other people to go forward in life. So yeah, by all means, go back home when you're familiar with someone and try to see if that's somewhere where you can survive. And in this case, it just was, like for most people, you lose everything or lose someone, you can go through emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Janelle?
Kind of, let's just come right out and say she was blaming God.
Mm-hmm.
And because she couldn't see past the blame, she could see no good coming out of losing her husband and sons. And she couldn't see a whole lot of good coming out of the daughter-in-laws, other than Ruth was as obstinate as she was about staying with her, as Naomi was for her to live. And can't you imagine these people that she left with good intentions, with good and friendly, and coming back completely changed, and they're going, wow, is this Naomi?
Yeah, it's I think a perfect example of times in our lives when we do question, when we do doubt, when we don't understand, and we're frustrated and upset by that we don't understand what's going on. And so it's easy to look at Naomi and tell her, just suck it up, Cupcake, you can do this. But that's not what she needs, is it? I mean, she's genuinely struggling with what's happened in her life. And sometimes we're genuinely struggling. And just to, tell somebody, well, just suck it up, you'll be fine. That's not real helpful, is it? And somebody says that to me, I won't say what I think, but that's kind of one of those things where it aggravates you when you do that. Redempta and then Steve.
Her countenance had to have fallen.
Sure, her countenance had to have fallen. Bad things had happened to her. Definitely, Steve.
I'm just going to say sometimes it's we only see a bit of the decision process. In retrospect, our hindsight is 20/20 when we see God's will working through us, and sometimes we interpret God's no and the things that we go through as something like punishment. I think God is keeping us away from other dangers or other issues, but this passage also tends to take more like the story of like Job. We have adversaries. We've got to recognize that God is for us, but who is against us? This is true not just in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament.
Sure, absolutely. Job had all sorts of trials through no fault of his own. Job hadn't done anything wrong. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar tried to convince him that he had, but he hadn't done anything wrong. This was all between God and Satan and a little contest. Let's see if Job will break under pressure, and he didn't. And so all that was going on way beyond what Job could see, and there's a whole lot going on way beyond what Naomi can see. And she's frustrated, she doesn't understand, and she's aggravated, and I think we've got to be careful about being judgmental of her, because there but by the grace of God go I. What might I do had I lived through those circumstances that she lived through? I might be even worse. I might have given up on my faith. Who knows? Because we just need to be careful about that, because again, she's struggling, and every once in a while we're all going to struggle. Marcia?
Well, like James says, our problems make us stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a reason why God has put this on her.
Yeah, it'll make her stronger. She'll be able to look back on things in the future and say, and you can do this too, can't you? Look back at your life and see, God did that, God did that, God did that. I didn't see it at the time, didn't understand it at the time, but now looking back on it, it's like, yeah, I see how that worked out for my betterment, even though at the time I didn't like it. John?
There's something sometimes where the first time that you have to experience it, go through it, it's really daunting, and you think, no way. If you get through that first time, you're like, never again. I'll do whatever it takes to not have to do it again. And then you have to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit easier the second time. You figure some things out about yourself. You grow a little bit, you get a little bit stronger until about the third or fourth time that you're having to go through this same valley, you're like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but I got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
God's going to fix this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't leave her in this situation very long, so she's going to be able to see that God hasn't forsaken her,
Yeah.
as she thought.
And it's coming. She just doesn't know it's coming yet. And that's our trouble. We can't see the future. We can't predict the future. We don't know what it's going to be like. And so we're just waiting. And sometimes I'm not a very patient waiter. Are you? I want it to happen now. As we said earlier, I want it to happen right now. I don't want to wait on God's timeline. I want my timeline. And that means I want it 5 minutes ago. And we just don't have that. Elwin and then Glenn.
Yeah, one of the situations I've learned about, and John brought it up, was the fact that each time God puts us through a certain trial and tribulation with a brother or sister, it builds us up to help understand and to have more feelings and empathy and sympathy or whatever it may be for the next challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Because each one of us is giving a specific gift to use. We have to use that gift. We can't hide it under the bushel. We got to let that light shine. If we have the gift, we have got to put it to work. And God said, hey, if I give you this gift, it's for the body. We all work together, controlled by the head. And that's how the church has to operate. It has to be obedient to the head, Christ. And the second part of this is that when I've learned to pray that, I'm like you, I wanted it yesterday. But people that are having problems with their faith, and they're not being obedient to God, it's a battle. It's a battle between Satan We're fighting spiritual things here. And it's a battle with the power that God has given us. So our faith has to be increased to the point of where we believe that whatever God's will is going to happen. And sometimes it's not my will for this person. God has other plans for that person. But I cannot give up. I cannot be defeated because Christ, the Spirit, is more powerful than anything Satan can hand to us.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right there. And our faith is being able to trust what God is doing. And that's the hard part, isn't it? To actually trust that He knows what He's doing, and what He's doing is in the end going to be, well, all things work together for good for them that love the Lord and are called according to His purposes, Romans 8:28. Glenn, you had a comment.
You know, we studied Judges, and those people were very unfaithful in what. And in the providence of God, and this is just supposition, in the providence of God, they go down into Moab. They meet a woman with great character and response and whatever. And she comes up and she becomes in the life in the heritage of Christ. So I think we see God's providence here.
Sure. Yeah. You think about all the things that happened. Okay, the famine, whenever that was, we discussed when we started the book. We don't know when that was because really didn't ever say there was a famine in the book of Judges, except maybe when the Midianites were destroying all the food. But whatever the case, there was a famine. And Elimelech's family made the decision to go to Moab. And in Moab was Ruth. And how did they end up together? Happenstance? Chance? Dumb luck? Or was God behind that? Simply shaking your head. I think God was behind that to get her there. The events that take place, her coming back, and as you said, being in the lineage of Jesus. Now, what an amazing thing. All that had to come together in order for that to work. And that was all God's doing. I can't give anyone else credit for it because, luck just doesn't explain it. It has to be more than that. And God used that circumstance to bring about her place in the lineage of Jesus, of getting Jesus here. Flo?
Well, one thing we know is for certain is that they went to Moab because of the family. He survived with his family. We talked 2 weeks ago, we talked about did Naomi have rights or a say-so and all those things because of the culture then. We talked about all those things. And then comes Ruth, that his women, God literally took the time and inspired a book about them, an entire book. So as far as their importance, their value, their experience, and their example, God had a purpose for that. He wrote an entire book about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a very good point. This story is in the Bible for a reason, isn't it? God chose to see it put in here. What seems just like a very simple, very nice, very Hallmark Channel movie plot, but it has a deep meaning and deep purpose in that for us to understand what's going on here, and it's not just the simple things that we're talking about here. All right, any other thoughts, comments on any of that? Yes, Melanie.
Do you think because she said all these things, she came back to her family and she's saying, all these things happened to me? And we do that too when we request for prayers.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that's what happened in my life, and rather than go help. And I feel like, do you think because she said this, her family will help her?
Okay, Melanie asked the question, was this a plea for help, in a sense, for her family to help her and help her work through this? No, could be. I'm not going to say it's not, because we don't know. But it may be, taking it from that angle, she may be saying, this is what's happened to me. And not in the sense of she's calling God out on it. This is what's happened to me. This is what's done to me. I just want you to know what's done to me. And I find that interesting because do we like to share with each other our problems and our struggles and our trials and tribulations? How many of you like doing that? I don't think any of us do. And yet we're told to confess our sins to one another. But I ain't doing that. That's what a lot of people say, right? I'm not going to do that. And why is that? Why is it that we are to share things with each other? Ellen?
To build each other up.
Okay.
To be there for each other, because love is an action word. If someone says, I have the faith of God, but I don't have love, I'm just a clanging cymbal. We are the same way. If we say that we love one another, we have to show it through action.
Okay.
So therefore, it's one of the reasons that I like to talk to people and see what's going on in their lives and see where I can help them. Because some people, they're not going to come out just off the top, but I can tell you that we know, when we greet someone at the door, when they come in the church building in the morning, you can tell. And I suppose you might have to say, if you have that particular gift, because each of us have different gifts, we can tell when someone is down and out, when someone is hurting, when something is bothering them. And when you ask, how can I help you? What can I pray for you for? What are you going through that I could help you with or direct you to somebody? We have to be alert. We have to pay attention to detail and make sure that each one of us is on the same page. And when one starts to get off that page, each one of us is responsible as a body to help that person to be restored.
Don't you think sometimes just the act of telling something makes it better? Unloading whatever it is that's on my mind and heart, whatever I've got that's bugging me, just telling somebody else about it. Not that they can do anything about it, not that they can fix it, not that they have any skill whatsoever to change it, but just telling them is helpful, isn't it? It somehow that feels better. Dave?
Oftentimes we think of the formality of coming up in front of the congregation and making a formal, I'm not sure that that's what the scripture is talking about. The encouragement of two friends over a lunch, is probably more effective than me coming up and saying, "Hey, I've got a problem," which I'm not going to tell you about, but I want you to pray for me.
Yeah.
So that's it seems to me that probably the scripture's talking about being in fellowship with people who care about you. And I'm not saying the entire church doesn't care about each other, but we do have relationships within the church that are closer than with other people.
Yeah, we're not all on the same level as far as our friendships, as far as interactions and all that go. We have certain people that we deal with more, that we're around more, and so then naturally they are closer to us in that setting. But there's a good benefit from saying, I have this issue. With me not expecting you to do anything about it other than pray for me. And just because sometimes that's helpful to know that I'm not in this by myself. Steve.
James 5:16, just paraphrasing it, but prayer of a righteous person, avails much. We're told to pray for each other. That's part of why we confess our sins.
Yeah. We'll pray for each other, if nothing else. And I think our response, if Naomi were to come into this congregation and tell us all of that, what are we going to want to do? I'm going to fix it, right? Isn't that what we men do? We fix things till we can't, and then wife calls and hires somebody to fix it. So, but we want to fix it. And a lot of times when people are asking for help, they're not asking for a fix. They're not asking for me to do anything about it. They're just wanting me to know and to be aware and to be sympathetic to the circumstance that they're going to have to work through anyway. Because maybe I can't fix it for them. Just don't have the ability or the skills to do that anymore. Diana and then Janelle.
This is just my saying.
Okay.
This is nothing I can on the scripture. But I think when a person reveals to you their darkest, deepest sin, God is one that's looking at the receiver of that information. How are you handling it? Are you taking it as, oh wow, let me go tell someone else, somebody else's deepest, darkest secret? You set in judgment because you feel that they when God hears our prayers, He doesn't go out and, say, okay, I'm gonna let everybody know. He goes into that forgiveness and that hope that we need, that comfort that we need. And a lot of times when I feel like someone gives me something that trusts me to give you that information, it's just overwhelming because God is letting me see that person's heart. We can see each other's faces today and we can put on a happy, oh, how you doing type thing, but when God just takes it all off and lets you see that person, He's looking at you like, really, is this how you feel when someone comes to you with something that's such a deep, dark secret that your God is really, that's really how they are? See, I'm trusting you to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's why in the family relationship there has to be that trust, so that if I do approach you about something and want to talk about it, that I know it's not going to be in the bulletin next week, or something like that, or a sermon illustration. Although everything's fair game for sermon illustrations, just so you know. But in fact, I saw a T-shirt this week online that said something to the effect of, "Be careful, or you'll be in my next sermon." And it was on a Bible site of some kind. But we've got to have that trust with each other. And when they're coming to me and telling me that, again, there but by the grace of God go I. I can be judgmental about that and be just as guilty of some sin as they are of theirs. And yet I am taking the high road because I think I'm better than they are. And yet we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Janelle, I think you're next.
When we make something, like when we come forward or ask for prayers or something, not necessarily asking for the fix, but I think it strengthens sometimes the person who's coming forward, because now they know they've got someone to help them, someone to back up, someone to pray. In fact, if there's a whole congregation praying for them, that gives you extra strength that, maybe you might not make the right decision, but if you know these people are praying for your right decision, then it's easier to make that right decision.
Exactly. My friend Kim Wall, we announced, put out the email that had another heart attack, several that he's had now. One of his stents got plugged up and they had to go in and fix it. And he's had issues. Well, his wife, Tess, texted me immediately to let me know what was going on. And I said, can we put him on our prayer list? And she said, oh, absolutely. And so here, he's in Oklahoma, and he knows that there's a church up here, most of whom he's never met, wouldn't know us if we ran into him in the airport, is praying for him. How comforting is that to know, just that they know, and maybe give it some thought during the course of the day. And I think that's a powerful thing. We're out of time. We got to quit right there, so we'll pick up there, Lord willing, next Sunday morning.